can see us live on Twitter. You can see us up on YouTube. All right, buddy. Play a full 60. Shift by shift, battle by battle. Leave it all out there, bud. Hard up and down the IC shift now. 21,000.
Game on.
Game on. Welcome to episode 9, the Gordie Howe episode.
Gordy.
Straight off the pipe. I am Dash, otherwise known as Dash in the Park. This goon in the box beside me sometimes gets Einstein's theory of relativity mixed up with Einstein's definition of insanity, but we love him anyways. Megathread Mike Dursa.
Well, we're going with the Mega Thread now, not the Lady Bing, Massachusetts Wayne Gretzky award here. Okay.
Mix it up. Mix it up.
Got to keep
The
them
church
guessing.
never stop, bro.
Got to keep them guessing. That's the name
That's
of the
right.
game. Always on your feet.
Yep. Sorry I missed the show last time, buddy. We had a little startup for about 20 minutes. I was loving the content. Chad and I were going back and forth on some goaltending stuff, and our good old friend, the audio source crashed on me here in cell block 33 that I reside in. So you and Chad carried on. I had a listen, and boy, I had a lot to say. I wish I would have been there. It was times of agreement, times of disagreement. There was some hot takes, I would say. I would have loved to have dive a little deeper with some of that with him, to be honest, and maybe he can get on here tonight and get on the message thread if he's got time, because I'd love to still ask him some questions if possible. But I enjoyed listening to you guys.
Yeah, definitely not a fan of Justin Schwartz there. And I don't know, like, yeah, does kind of feel like the guy is able to survive a Chernobyl kind of meltdown. You know, how many regime changes has there been in oil country, and he seems to be the lone survivor of it all. So yeah, I don't know if there's, you know, a lot of smoke. Well, there's definitely smoke there, from what he's saying.
Yeah,
And you know,
I think so.
I'm not a goalie. I've played net a few times in cases where you have to have somebody put on the pads to be able to play. But you know, I realize when you've got two really, you know, two of the biggest goalies in the NHL, and they play so deep in their net, I've always questioned it. Like, you know, you're that big. If you come out of your net a little bit and you cut down angles, there's no net left to shoot at. And I've always questioned why. You know, and the answer you always get is, well, their skating isn't good enough. And to me, I don't really buy that. One hard push from guys that big, and they can cover a lot of ground. So, I
I wanted you to elaborate on that when I heard you say it. What do you mean by skating? Do you mean, you know, like in and out movements, your back and forth, like your lateral pushing off the posts, or
Really, all of it.
I wanted you to kind of elaborate because I know when you said skating, it made me think of, well, he's not backward skating like a defenseman. So what do
Right,
you mean, right?
right. So if you're a big goalie and you play a more aggressive style, so you're out of your net, beyond the top of the crease. Ideally, I'd like to see them on guys coming in to be about 2-3 feet from the top of the crease. So they're playing aggressive. Now, if there's a pass that goes across ice, they have to be able to be push across to be able to cover the pass across. So that's
For sure.
that's the area where people say their skating isn't good enough to be able to do that, and I don't buy it. It's one hard push and they can cover 15 feet of real estate, and they're big, strong guys. They're supposedly in great shape. So why can't they do
I
one
guess
one hard push?
that's one thing I would have jumped on you for, I think, because ultimately, I don't think just because you're 6'7" means you have a good lateral push. Ultimately, you said something in your argument with him, and that you guys had an agree to disagree when you had said that you thought that they played very similar styles, but that Mike Smith seemed more athletic to you. My eye test tells me the same thing. I think when I watch Mike Smith versus when I watch Mikko Koskinen play, I think they do have very similar styles. I would have disagreed with Chad there. I think that Mike Smith does play deep in his net. That is absolutely a style, 100% that he learned from Sean Burke in Arizona. It was something that he toiled in the minors and tweaked and never really had his chance until he had that Tippett Sean Burke connection. And Sean Burke had that exact same style taught to him by Benoit Allaire before that in Arizona. And Benoit Allaire went on to the New York Rangers and did exactly what you guys talked about with Henrik Lundqvist and Cam Talbot, and Antti Ranta was part of that you guys missed. He's still there, and look what's happening with Georgiev and Shestrikin. So, I think that you guys didn't maybe break down the differences in how these guys goaltend coach, and you didn't maybe break down the differences in how these big goalies play a little bit, right? Um, I think that Smith playing back in his net, as well as and deep into his net the way Mikko does as well, um, does cause them to have to be more athletic, right? So if you're playing deeper in your net, you've got to move farther to play laterally and stop passes going across or coming through lanes. If you're playing out farther, there's less angle to cut off, so you're, theoretically moving less, right? But now you have more open ice behind you for backdoor passes, tap ins, and what have you. So I understand the playing deep mentality. I don't understand the playing deep mentality of goalies now at Dubnik, Koskinen, and Smith that are all 6'7". We've had a stable of giant goaltenders come through here. Cam Talbot wasn't small at 6'4". You know what I mean? Like, this was something that's happened. So, just to tie up this point, Smith, I believe, does have better skating. I believe he does have better lateral movement. I believe he does have that ability to compete harder for the puck, as well as get into position more quickly than Mikko can, going back and forth. I think that is the difference between those two athletically, and I think that is what I think I know. What I don't know is what the difference is between Schwartz and Allaire and Sean Burke, who all teach this, head trajectory, deep in your net type of style as a goaltender, that they must do it differently, because what they're doing with the Rangers and the Coyotes year after year after year is golden. And what we've done in Edmonton is just chew up and shit out goaltenders.
Yeah, it, it baffles me in a sense that you've got these guys that are monsters, and I don't think there's any argument there. And you have them camped almost on the red line, playing more of a butterfly style. You're taking away from their size advantage. Like, you really are. That's their biggest asset. Both of those guys is their big guys. So have them play more.
Yeah.
Have them play more aggressive. Have them out. Especially on plays where it's one on one. One guy coming in and there's a defender there. Come out. Be aggressive. And oh, train your D to cut off the pass. Let the goalie handle the shooter, and handle him. Come out. If he's gonna go to the far side of the net, your defenseman, that buys them time to get into a collision or whatever, and shut the play down. I don't understand it. You're asking Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith to be Grant Fuhr, and they aren't. So, and
That's right.
the argument you always get is that um, these guys have their own goalie coaches, so it really doesn't matter who Edmonton's goalie coach is. Come on, we've tried everything here. Why not try a different goalie coach?
Yeah.
If he's not doing anything anyway, what's the harm? If you're going to
Well, and I think what you were trying to get at is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity, right? And so, like you
right,
say, that's the one constant that hasn't changed of all the catalysts that have come through this,
right,
Edmonton Oilers petri dish, and you're right. There's smoke where there's fire. There has to be, right? I mean, Edmonton has not been able to produce a good goaltender in when really, like, since maybe Grant Fuhr. To be honest, we traded for Ranford. It was Mogan Fuhr before that, and moving up from Ranford, you got into like a stable of, like, it wasn't Ty Conklin, it's not Tommy Salo, it's not Mike Morrison, it's not, who are those guys? And you go all the way to, oh 06, oh 07, oh 08. That's Dwayne Rollison. I mean, he was brought in on a trade, and we tried
yeah,
to develop Delorier, we tried to develop Dubnik, we're trying to develop Skinner, Laurent Brossois, every single one of those goalies that got brought up into our system did below average as an Oiler and went on and did very well somewhere else. Laurent Brossois is an excellent backup goalie. Devin Dubnik's been one of the best and most consistent starters in the league for the last 10 years. And, he had 1 year of Schwartz. That was the year that Schwartz came. Um, I think Dubnik was long messed up before Schwartz ever got involved with him, in all honesty. That would have been another thing I would have mentioned to Chad there. But ultimately, what Dubnik said when he left was that the biggest difference, I read an article and I actually thought it was really interesting that Dubnik said the biggest difference between what the Oilers asked me to do and what Sean Burke asked me to do in Arizona was that Sean Burke didn't care where I stood in the crease as long as my feet were set. And when a puck got passed laterally, as long as I could get to that position and ahead of the puck and have my feet set again. Right? Like, that's interesting, right? Because if Schwartz is making them sit under the crossbar in their crease and not allowing them to put their feet where they're comfortable or what have you, right? I get the theory of putting them deep so there's limited movement, and the more you limit movement and the less a goalie has to move around, the less holes there are and the less timing you give shooters and all of that. And if you're gonna play deep in your net, it's better to play a 6'7" guy deep than a 6 foot or 5'11" guy deep, right? Because then there's that much bigger hole. So I get that, but it's not working.
yeah. I'm See, you're I don't know. The way I look at it is, if you're facing an out and out shot, you know, if you come out and cut down, the net, you don't have to rely on reflexes and instinct to make the save. Your positioning should be there. You haven't left
That's right.
any net left. But when you sit back in your net, that shooter can take their sweet ass time to find that hole and rip it by you. And
Yeah.
especially if you don't have cat like reflexes, and I think that's something that's been exposed. You know, with both guys really, but more so with Mikko. And I'll
Yeah.
argue I'll argue with Chad on Mikko used to having a glove hand. I don't think it's ever been something that he's had. Um,
No, I would have jumped in and backed you up on that one as well, brother. And I think that, your point when you said he didn't need a glove hand before was very relevant. That was one of the best things you said there, because that made a ton of sense.
well, if
Um,
you're out
you
and you're
know,
cutting down angles, then all of a sudden, yeah, your glove hand, your blocker, and all that sort of become irrelevant because you're just letting the puck hit you. It's not, you don't.
you can become a puck blocker like Laurent Brossois as
Right,
opposed to
right,
having to
right,
be athletic and
right,
lift your big heavy arm above.
right. You're a sheet of plywood rather than having to be a gymnast in that.
Yeah, for sure. And Chad kept referencing that he watched him play back in Finland, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he must have meant that he watched him play back in Russia. Miko played in the KHL for
Well,
the 6 years or 7 years prior to coming to the NHL. In his first stint, he played a quick little stint in Finland for 30 games before that team went debunk. And then that was where he ended up after being drafted by the Islanders in '09. So his time in Russia was the last 6 years before coming in. The final 4 years of those 6 years, he played for Vladimir Putin's super team.
yeah,
They
unless
had Datsuk and Kovalchuk and every one of the best Russian players that could come through there. They had snipers in the stands that if you got too many rebounds, there was trouble. There was no penalties called. There was refs paid off. There was so Miko did well. His stats were unbelievable, but he also played for the only team that didn't have a salary cap in the entire KHL. Um, so let's be somewhat relative, and that's a bigger ice. The average, I looked back in his last 3 seasons before joining the NHL with SKA, and he had an average of 21, 22, and 24 shots per game. He steps into the Edmonton Oilers at
30 shots a night.
18, 19, and exactly 31 shots a night, 19, 20, 31 shots a night, 20, 21, 29 shots a night. And that's a smaller ice surface. Those are more high percentage chances. Those are exactly what we're talking about, Durst, the lateral movement. There's a lot more movement involved when you're taking that higher frequency of shot. When you're playing that European game and they only score 3 or 4 goals a game at most between both teams, and the goaltending doesn't see that type of traffic, that I think helps Miko's game. I think Miko's always been a goaltender that plays better when he's not under fire.
Yeah, Mr. Graham might be going back to pre New York Islanders drafting Mikko Koskinen. I'm not too sure, but I just know that um, he did a good
He
job.
played in the Olympics and the World Juniors for Finland as well, so I give him the benefit of the doubt.
He,
He's seen him play somewhere, but
yeah, he did a good job last season at the start of the year to kind of hold the place for Smith. I mean, really, without Miko's little start there, I don't think we're a playoff team. So I'll give him some credit for that. But it's kind of the same old thing. Like, Talbot, he has a great season. Then after that, every first shot he's snake bitten by, and it's just
yeah.
like what is that? How is that like a cyclical problem between multiple goalies in Edmonton? I really don't get it.
I
Like,
wondered if that was preparation when you said it.
yeah, I don't know. I,
Like if it's not technique, is it just your preparation? Is it mental?
yeah, you're not ready to play.
How's he getting prepared before the game? Because you're right. Like it's been stupid, the trend of how many first shots have gone in
Yeah,
between Cam Talbot and Mikko Koskinen since 2017.
yeah. And I don't consider that a doomsday scenario, but holy fuck, is it ever messed up that
No,
it
it's
just
just a
keeps
trend.
happening? Yeah, yeah. Like I know a lot of
Yeah.
people.
And again, we're
They
just not
scored.
first fire.
They scored the first goal on us. That's it on the first shot. It's the game's over. Well, no, but it's just not a good way to start a game. You're starting
Yeah.
from playing from behind and right away, and it's just not how you want to play. So it's something that's a very ugly wart that needs to get cured. Um,
For sure.
I think that's good on the Schwartz front. So the Nurse deal hasn't come down yet, but lots of speculation. Where do you think that's going to come in at, and what do you think of all that? And yeah, I guess I'll let you go. But
It's been interesting to see the range of people and their thoughts, hey? Like what COVID and the pandemic has essentially done to the NHL here has separate the rich from the poor. Because what we're seeing with these big contracts now to defensemen, and what we're seeing with what some of the guys are getting as far as term goes with the Hymans and the players that are um providing a lot of value are getting a lot, and the guys that are borderline players, everybody's just got to take 1 million or less now. And I think that trend worked out really well in Darnell Nurse's favor. He chose to take bridge deals to get to where he is now and earned every dollar of it. I was gonna actually come on the pod tonight and tweak you about a bunch of things Darnell Nurse was terrible at, just because I wanted to see how upset I could get you to start the show, but I didn't have the heart in me because I just love the guy too much, man. Like
The,
he's you said Gordie Howe episode, like let's talk about Darnell Nurse, man. Like he's as old school as they come, and those intangibles are hard to find nowadays in the NHL. And a guy that can, put blood, guts, and fists and shots and skates to the ice like Darnell does is pretty unique. So um, I think that Cale Makar keeps getting thrown out there as this comparable, and I don't think that's fair. I think he's, basically one year out of his rookie year, and Darnell's more established. I see Heiskanen get that first deal of the offseason and him come in where he did, and him only be in the league a few years, right? So I kind of thought to myself, oh boy, look at this trend. Then Seth Jones goes, oh, well, I think that's your marker, right? When Seth Jones gets that contract, that was the tipping point, I think, where Ken Holland, or well, probably where Darnell Nurse's agent went, ooh, because now they follow suit with Dougie Hamilton. That contract comes through, and the pieces that are getting put in place before Darnell Nurse and ahead of him here are doing nothing more but helping and helping and helping. So, you know, if you'd asked me this exact same question last year, I'd have thought, oh boy, I hope we don't have to pay 7.5. I hope we don't have to pay 8. If that's the case, I hope we get him for 8 years and not this 4-year garbage that's been thrown around. Then these equivalents come out, and all of a sudden it's looking like, oh, geez, well, if we get him for 7, it's a steal. And then it kind of trended towards if we got him in the eights, it'd be a steal. So if we come in at 9 for 8, I think there's going to be a lot of people that shit their pants, to be honest, Durs. But I don't know what else they expect. I think that's the going rate for defensemen right now. We certainly don't want to take a downgrade in that position. And guys like him are hard to come by. So when you've got core players like that, you pay them.
I'm gonna go off here because I absolutely love the guy. I'm at a game and they're in warm up and it's just warm up, but they're doing a 2-on-1 drill and Fast and the Furious "We Own It" song is on. Darnell skating backwards, singing the song, bobbing and weaving and defending and shutting everybody down, like cool as a cucumber. It's just warm up, yeah, but he's just singing, and he's an NHL guy, and he's into the music and just it it's so effortless for him, right? And that's the way he plays. I mean, the guy could play. Well, he did against Winnipeg, 63 minutes I think and change in a triple overtime game, finishes +1, and I bet afterwards he could have ran 3 miles. Like he's in a different stratosphere in terms of like conditioning and athleticism.
And he did it in junior too. He did it in Sault Ste. Marie when he played, or in
And
uh,
and I mean you're right.
brain for it. But he used to chase Connor McDavid around when
Yeah,
they were playing Erie, right?
yeah.
So
Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, I believe, was his team, but
yeah, yeah, I doubted it for a second, but yeah.
that's okay. He, I just uh, I'll say this right now. I don't think he's the best defenseman in the NHL. I really don't.
Sure.
But
No,
I absolutely love him. Like he can do anything you ask of a player, and at the position he plays, I think it's vitally important. So many people dismiss him, write him off. He's garbage. He can't pass. All of this stuff. He can't play. He can't defend. And it's just like,
and
what are you watching? Like you
I
have,
mean, the guy got 7th in voting for the Norris this year. Like, hey, how do you argue that he's not a top 7 defenseman in the NHL, or at least a top 10 defenseman? And
yeah,
you're gonna throw those top 10 defensemen up there that ranked in there. How many of them can do everything of those top 10 defensemen? You want to throw John Carlson and Victor Hedman and Cale Makar and whoever the top 5 are, you name them. How many of them can do the things that Darnell does on the ice?
right.
Like Victor Hedman's probably the closest comparable in my opinion, because he might actually bite your head off or chop your arm off if he's capable of it and wanting to.
Yeah,
But he's not as straight up beat the shit out of you and knock your teeth out,
right, right.
and
and that's a different intimidation, and that creates space for teammates on the ice. And
There's
I would argue that there's no other defenseman like him.
there's that. There's the, he can go with Lucic, he could go with Reeves, he could go with anybody
Yeah,
in the league. He might not win all those fights, but he'll survive them to play the next shift. He's not he's and that's the other thing. The guy is so durable. Like, but honestly, like,
yeah,
he plays all the time and can play heavy minutes, and he's not injury prone. I knocked on the wood already, so I don't feel like I need to do it again. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just, he's a horse, and you need that, and you need that size and that physicality. Like, for a long time, I thought people would want, six clones of Oscar Klefbom, and there's nothing. I got nothing against Klefbom. I thought he was a great player, but you can't have six Oscar Klefboms and win in today's NHL. I don't believe. I really don't.
for
You
sure.
you need a mixture of guys that can do other things, and Darnell can do anything you ask him. Oscar Klefbom couldn't. He was limited in some of the things he could do. He
Let
was.
me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
When was the last time we had a true number one defenseman?
Before this,
I'm thinking it's before Darnell Nurse, because I'm absolutely calling him a true number one in
yeah,
the NHL.
yeah,
Seventh in Norris, and there's 32 teams. He's
I,
in the top third of number one pairing defensemen.
I would
So
I would probably say Sheldon Surrey. I'll give
okay,
I'll give Surrey
fair.
I'll give Surrey that, even though it was short lived. But
I'll give you that based on some intimidation as well. Is also a guy that can drop the flippers, also a guy that can
yeah,
intimidate you with a shot.
yeah, yeah,
Played PK on power play.
yeah,
I'll give you that. I'd go back to '06.
yeah. It's Pronger after
I
that.
think, right?
Yeah,
So if we're gonna go back, I'll give you the caveat on Surrey. But if we're gonna go back to Pronger being our last true number one defenseman, let me ask you another question. Isn't this what we've always wanted? Since Pronger, have we not wanted a true number one defenseman again?
it's fucking laughable at people that don't understand what they
Right?
have in number 25. It is.
Like,
I
come on.
like
He
like
he's what we've always wanted. We groomed him. He turned out. We didn't ruin him. It's like
yeah,
celebrate Oilers. We didn't go Oilering and Justin Schultz this kid. You know what I mean? Like he
right.
turned out.
Yeah.
And then here's my final question. If you finally get that number one defenseman, do you not have to pay him number one defenseman money?
Well, I look at it as like, people. Are you okay with 9 million over four, or eight to nine over four for a Nurse? Because if you are, then I don't see why you're upset about the other 4 years that may or may not get added to that. If you've already got used
I
to
think if,
that amount and that cap hit for what you're getting there, and people want to compare his contract that may come in at 8 or 9 million to Leon's. That's not fair. It's not the same time.
no,
It's not the same time. And they say Nurse can't get paid more than Leon. Leon, let's face it, if he was signing a contract right now, it's probably 13, 14 million, not 8. So why are you arguing over a good contract for Leon? Does that make
yeah, I
Nurse's
think
deal a
that's
bad
the
one?
school of no, no, exactly, no, and I guarantee you, if you stuck a light in the face of Leon Draisaitl and made him tell the truth, he would want Darnell to make his day. I think he'd want him to make buck because that's what he deserves, and that he wants to keep that defenseman on his team at the end of the day, right?
Yeah,
So I think you would, you're probably hearing some of the chatter from those people that come from School of 90s Iserman or some current, law of Sakic down there in Colorado where one guy gets 6 million and nobody gets paid more than that, and
right,
Iserman's making six and Lidstrom's making six, so nobody's making more than six, and
right.
you know, Connor's special, he gets what Connor gets, and nobody else makes more than 8.5. Come on. Different markets, different positions, different players. At the end of the day, Leon Draisaitl signed a contract that we all thought was asinine at the time, and now he's one of the best value contracts in the entire NHL. So,
Yeah.
as the cap goes up, maybe this one with Darnell looks pretty good in the future as well.
Hmm.
So I think he's getting his due deserve, man. I
Yeah.
think he's earned it.
Yeah. See, the thing I think about too is, you know, if he did the 4 year deal, then when McDavid's contract is up, so is Nurse's, and then they can start looking around. But if they lock up Nurse for 8, then when Connor and Leon's contracts come up, oh hey, Darnell's still here. I think that's bargaining power for Edmonton, not the other way around. You know,
No doubt about it.
they're friends.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be. And the other thing, that you hear all the time, well, he's coming into a contract year off a heater of a shooting percentage. Okay, yeah, so he put more pucks in the net last year than he might this year, and then for the rest of his career, maybe potentially. I don't know, but if you can't recognize the transition just in his play alone over the summer, of losing to Chicago to starting this year, if you didn't recognize that he was a different player on the ice, just with the way he
Yeah.
carried himself out there,
Uh,
I don't know what you're watching or if you're watching at all.
yeah, man. And he's had that confidence for years. I was 3 rows. I was at Connor McDavid's 19th birthday game in Las Vegas,
Right.
the night that 21st birthday game when
Yeah.
he turned 21, and that was the year that the Knights opened that arena, and we were right in behind the net for overtime. We were 10 rows up. We were there with about 20 or 30 guys for my friend Red Dog's 40th birthday, and we watched Darnell walk in and score that overtime goal, and look straight at that group of guys that he celebrated with on the ice, and I can't even repeat what he said, but I saw his lips plain and clear. let's let's go, boys, and well, there's a few expletives in there. So, that passion's always there. He's been leading like that since then, and to take this step in this manner, yeah, come on, like that's he was doing that type of leading, um not only by example, but also with that energy you're talking about, right? Like he bleeds passion. It wears it on his sleeve. Who's that guy from the Toronto Maple Leafs that he just bloodied and battered his nose 5 6 years ago? Like Darnell Nurse is 20 years old, and this guy was 36 or something, and like just you know that's been happening for a long time. The step we saw, man, he was third on the Oilers in 5-on-5 scoring.
Yeah.
Third. Connor, Leon, and Nurse. Like, what the hell else do you want, man?
And
He was led the NHL in goals by defensemen. He led the NHL in goals by defensemen 5-on-5. Like, that just goes to show you how much of a warrior he is. He doesn't need the power play. Like,
that's right.
I,
Not a
I
lot of
don't know
power
what
play
else we could
time.
ask of Darnell, man.
Yeah. Right. And really, if you want to start taking shots at his defensive play, look, honestly, you got to look at who he was paired with for most of the season. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why Barry could flourish really is because Darnell's skating could cover it up. I mean, I've said it over and over again, but that's the only way.
Well, and he played a lot with Bear too. Bear didn't have a great first half, so he was doing a lot of covering for Ethan in the first half of the season as well.
Yeah, and you know, I still think like we're gonna feel the loss of Adam Larson, but if there's a guy that can take over in a more shutdown role if they ask him to, it's Nurse because he's got the tools to do that. He's strong and he can be mean if he needs to be mean. And for a guy that can play that way and still be smart enough to not be trotting to the penalty box 3 times a period, um,
Yeah.
and still brings a physical edge. I don't know. I can't say enough good things about him. I know he's not a flawless player, but man, I want that guy on my team. Imagine him if in Calgary in a Flames uniform. No thanks. No thanks.
It's pretty unfair to us for us to expect, to be able to get the next Nick Lidstrom. There's only so many perfect defensemen
Right.
that come through the NHL, right? And I mean that. Like there's only so many Nick Lidstroms and Ray Borks and it doesn't matter, Bobby Orr. When you're on the ice, you dominate, and that's just all there is to it, right?
Yeah.
So pretty unfair as a fan base to expect that we're gonna land that next one. Um, who of the defensemen that have been picked first, second, or third overall in the last 10 years? When you look at it, Seth Jones right beside, no, sorry, Victor Hedman right beside beside Tavares. You had Seth Jones that fell behind Hall and Sagan. You've got Eric Johnson, and none of them have been the next Chris Pronger, really. Hedman's getting there now, and in this, that's 12 years into being an NHL defenseman. He's this dominant, right? Like,
Yeah.
give Darnell his chance. Like, he's still trending upwards. That's what's scary.
Well, I saw like a total change in his approach to the game from losing to Chicago to last season. And you got to think that a guy that, played 63 minutes against Winnipeg in a closeout game, finished a +1, that he's probably the guy almost more than McDavid who took that loss the hardest. Maybe
Yeah,
maybe Mike Smith, but it just
sure.
so if he
I smell what you're cooking for sure.
if he has that same work ethic, this summer as he did last, and takes another leap forward, I mean, we're in for a hell of a ride.
Right.
And I think that's who he is. I think he's always evaluating how he's playing and wants to get better and wants to get better and lives to be an athlete. There's guys that play in the league that are there because they're talented, but they don't live to be athletes. Like there are guys that have that supreme talent, but don't take it personally when they lose. Oh well, go to the beach, go to Hawaii. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
I think what you're referring to is like that competitive fire,
Right.
right? I think that's maybe what you're referring to, because when I see competitive fire on a ranked board for the Oilers, you damn right Mike Smith's up at the top there, right? I
Yeah.
can't argue with that.
Yeah.
There's guys that wear it on their sleeve and you see it. But yeah, Darnell is one of those guys. There's no doubt. I mean, look at his bloodline. Like
Yeah.
Kia Nurse doesn't get to where she is, being a elite basketball player and now one of the best women's professional basketball players alive. Not to mention one of the best basketball broadcasters, period, male or female. Sarah Nurse being one of the greatest female hockey players on the planet. His uncle being Donovan McNabb, being one of the best quarterbacks to have ever lived. His dad being a CFL player. Like these guys, you don't get to that level of athlete or that level of competition or be the best um, at what you do and play at the highest level of what is offered in the sport or that you play,
Yeah.
unless you have that absolutely burning inside of you, and clearly that's in that family's bloodline.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just make one point on Kia because it's a subject I know something really well. I think she's the best female basketball player that Canada's ever produced, bar none. And
Yeah,
I don't go back to the early
hard to argue.
I don't go back to the early 1900s when the Edmonton Grads were beating everybody and have the greatest winning percentage of any sports team ever. I don't go back that far. I've seen them play a little bit, but I think Kiev in my time frame is the best that we've ever produced. And it's not even close. So
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean he's got that athleticism oozing through his body, and people like I don't know, like how do you not get it? How do you not see it? Like what are you watching? I it baffles me. Like
yeah,
oh
I,
he's got no hockey IQ. Well, that game that we lost to Chicago to end that little playoff series, I'll call it.
mhm.
He took the last shot. Yeah, he missed the net, but he took the last shot. So he didn't quit, you know, and he doesn't quit.
And his coach put him on the ice to take the last shot
Yeah, yeah,
in the most important game of the year.
or at least be in the have a possibility of getting it right. So
Well, I mean, it just goes to show you that he earned it, man. That's what it comes down to. So you don't get that position on your team unless you do.
so
Um,
I gotta
so yeah, I think if we get Darnell at 9 million over 8 years, we should be happy. If we get him in the eights, I think we should be lucky. And if we're gonna go down to a 4 or 5 year term, it's gonna cost us 9.5, 10 million, man. So I don't know.
Yeah, and
What do you think he's coming in at?
I think it's between 8 and 9, and I think it's a longer term deal, and I've already accepted it and moved past it. Like that's
Yeah,
that's an asset
I
you want.
celebrate it. Never mind past it.
Yeah, that's an asset you want in your arsenal for a long time, and I really believe that. Like
Yeah,
you can look around the Western Conference, and you're hard pressed to name me guys that can do everything that he can do. And the closest reasonable facsimile I can think of really is, like I've said, Brett Burns, but Burns is
right,
a little older. So
right.
yeah, yeah, no, it's I don't know.
You got a kid named Connor McDavid on your team, and if you didn't, who's the captain of the Edmonton Oilers?
Probably Leon Draisaitl, but I mean, yeah,
I'd argue it might be Darnell Nurse, man.
he'd be
You know,
he'd be in the running for sure.
so it'd be between those two, and it's there. One more check box, future captain. If captain material, I guess is what I should say. Is not your future captain because that means you don't have Connor. But
Yeah,
I don't know. I got nothing but good things to say about him.
me too.
It's
Me too. I just and I you know what I think is that he hasn't like climbed the top of the mountain yet. I think he's still gonna grow. He's still gonna learn, and I really fully believe that you know one of the best parts of this. I'm not never gonna like that we assume the full salary, but I think this Duncan Keith acquisition is really gonna help Nurse. I really believe that. I think Nurse is gonna learn a lot of how to become even a better NHLer and athlete
Yep,
in general. And it's more
yep. Expensive tutor,
yeah,
but I don't doubt it.
yeah, it's more the it's more the mental side of the game too. That's what I fully believe. Darnell's got all the physical tools you could ever ask, but just the mental side of the game, poise in key situations. I think he's going to learn that from Keith. And um, I,
Well, how to pace yourself, right? I mean, if there was anybody that could have played a 65-minute game before Darnell Nurse, it was probably Duncan Keith 5, 6, 7 years ago, right?
yeah,
So, that's the type of guy that can tell you how to pace yourself over the playoffs, how to pace yourself over 82 games, how to pace yourself over a 64-minute triple overtime game, right? Like, and he's sitting beside him
yeah,
in the dressing room and sitting beside him in the box now, or in the dress, you're in the so it's yeah, there's no way whatsoever that it's not going to help Darnell Nurse's game. There's no doubt about it. Again, we could argue about the price of the tutor, but we won't.
I
Um,
don't think there's an argument there. I'm conceding to the fact that taking the full salary wasn't the brightest move. I wouldn't have done it. I think you could have got that 1.5 million or 2 million of that salary assumed by Chicago, even if it cost you a little bit more of an asset. I think it was worth it to try to get some of that salary knocked off.
keep hearing more and more rumblings that it might be a 1 year deal and not a 2 year deal. I don't know if it's true or not, but if Keith decides to retire after this year and not play out that final year, then it almost gives Holland a bit more of a pass because then he knew, well, he made this deal. Well, he can't tell the public, but if that happens, then he took a chance at Keith for 1 year at 5.5, and the second year, if he retires, Chicago has to pick up 1.5 million of his salary, and our cap is very, very little affected. So maybe that's part of it, and people are all up in arms because they don't know what else Kenny's up to, and if that's that 1 year bridge that Keith takes us to potentially the next step or can push Nurse to that next level, well, it
Yeah,
might be okay for one. Again, I don't dislike what they brought in with Duncan Keith. I just hated the fact that it was the first spend of our dollar.
it's just a cost, right? Um,
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think that's wishful thinking to think it's a one off, but who knows? I know we'll have them in October, and that's kind of where I'm at, day to day.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I got something else that's a little different. We can kind of use it as the
sure,
what the frack segment as a surprise to you.
sure.
Although I was
Okay.
kind of wondering what your surprise was last week, but that's okay. Um,
Yeah, well,
so
to wait till we have chat next time.
so this is kind of a thing that one of the things about Rexall, one of the charms is you look back on the wall and you're in oil country and all that kind of stuff. Um, but the other thing was before guys skated out, we had a rig come down from the rafters and some fireworks and pretty colors and all that, and the guys would skate out from underneath that. And when they built Rogers Place, apparently we decided a gargantuan scoreboard that's behind you in your frame was vital, and it's a beautiful scoreboard and all that. But there's no room to have a rig come down, is the supposed story. But you think with engineers in 2021, they could figure out a way to have it there. So I guess my question to you is, do you miss the old rig that would come down?
Yeah, for nostalgia's sake, sure. It had its it had its time, but we're in a new age. I think that there's different ways you can entertain the fans now, and you've got all the DJs and the LED lights, and look what Vegas is doing when they've got airplanes versus whatever, and doing big movie screen shows on the ice and characters, and so yeah, do yeah.
D- d-
I hate surprises, Durs.
from being a season ticket holder, um, does it bother you, that intermission is kind of ho hum? Because for me,
Yeah.
it doesn't affect my NHL experience whatsoever. I go there, and when intermission comes, I go to the bathroom, grab a beer, and come back to watch the game. So I'm not there for what's going on in the intermission. I'm there for what's going on, in the 60 minutes of the hockey that's being played in between the
It,
periods. But
it's not just the what I have a problem with, and I don't want to come down as Neggy Nelly here, but what I have a problem with in the whole presentation, it's not just that the intermissions are ho hum, it's that the whole game can be ho hum, man. Like honestly, maybe because it's because I'm friends with Ryan Jesperson, but my most exciting time is when Ryan Jesperson starts screaming it's t-shirt toss time, and that's pretty sad when that's your best attraction, right? Like, I think we're pretty weak with our music. I think we're terrible at some of the song choices. I think the way they, play some of the videos before the game and in between, kiss cams and backwards eating, and like it's kind of elementary, man. I would rather see, I've been to games in Dallas, I've been to games in Vegas, I've been to games in LA, I've been to games in out east, and it's like they have player interviews during the intermissions, and they have like, all these different types of, I don't know. I do find that the Oilers really lack on the whole entertainment package, and that's just like not necessarily what they're doing just with intermission. It's what they're doing in between every whistle. It's what they're doing pregame. It's the fact that they can't make a Bobby Nix burger for my father-in-law without it being lukewarm. Um, he's about 19 for 20 on cold burgers. I don't know, man. I just like it just feels like a lack of give a fuck sometimes.
yeah, there's times where you sort of feel like you're taken for granted, for like if you're not here, somebody else will be, um, and
That's exactly what I was just
and
gonna say. You
and
got
and it
Kevin Lowe to find it when he called us tier one, two, and three fans, right? And then he built Rogers Place, and now it's tier one, two, three, four, five, six, and seven fans, because now it's the Loge that's the most important, and then it's the Sportsnet Lounge, and it's not just the season ticket holder anymore. So
for the
I don't know.
record, I think Kevin probably deeply regrets that whole day, but and if he doesn't, if he doesn't, he should. Um,
Well, he knows a thing or two about winning. Okay.
yeah, yeah, I think he might have been a better GM than anything, but that's a whole different subject. Well,
Yeah, for
my
sure.
man, I think we've probably touched on enough for another night, so I'll let you give your parting ways, and then I'll wrap up, and we'll carry on and see everyone
Sounds
Sunday.
good. We've hacked up enough ice and broken enough pucks here. So yeah, good talking with you. Sorry we missed the last one. if we get a little bit of time on Sunday, I wouldn't mind talking about the schedule. I kind of been looking at it and breaking it down, and there's some crazy things happening this upcoming season when you look at kind of three or four major factors, which is not just that the Olympics is coming up, but also that the NHL decided to still hold an All-Star game in a year where they have the Olympics, because that's generally not done. Not to mention Edmonton itself hosting the IIHF in December as well. So yeah, I had a look at some of what the Oilers are up against, and I'm not going to say it. There's going to be some fun stretches of hockey coming where we feel like we're watching hockey every second night for 2 weeks, and I'm not even kidding. That's literally what's going to happen, because there's a stretch of 8-14, 8-16, 7-14. So during those times, we'll have a lot to talk about, my friend. But we can talk about that maybe next time. And that's all I got to say tonight. I just want you to make sure you're getting pucks deep and keep your head down.
Well, you touched on that, so I got to say it's going to be a real breath of fresh air to sit in a rink again and watch a game. And on that note, I will say what I always say to close: keep your sticks on the ice and keep reaching for the stars, and go Oilers go. Check us out Sunday night, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for coming. Good night. Goals and fights and assists and elbows. R.A.P. Gordy. Remember to keep your feet moving out there.